Hashtag the hunter and his alien love. Domesticated terror, her pet Kraken. Hashtag part 1. The cosmic hunter. Taeho checked his hunting gear one last time. His fingers moved quickly over each piece of equipment. The stun net launcher, the biosignature tracker, the reinforced capture cage, all in perfect working order. He had to be ready. This hunt would be like no other. Ship status, Taeho said, his voice echoing in the empty cockpit of the Stalker's Pride *. All systems optimal. The ship's computer responded. We will reach the Hera Nebula in 6 hours. Taeho nodded and sank into the captain's chair. The stars streaked past the view screen as his ship cut through space. He had been hunting dangerous creatures for 15 years now. From the acid-spitting maw worms of Gantu to the invisible death stalkers of the Viridian moons, Taeho had caught them all. But this time was different. This time, he hunted a legend. The Void Kraken, a creature most believed was just a story told by drunk space travelers. Until 3 months ago, when a mining crew captured blurry footage of something massive attacking their ship. Something with too many tentacles to count and eyes that glowed like dying stars. Taeho opened his tablet and studied the footage again. The creature in the video was only a juvenile, but it had torn through the mining ship's outer hull like it was paper. He zoomed in on one frame where a single tentacle was visible. It was thicker than a human torso. His payment for this job was more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. But that wasn't why he took it. Taeho hunted for the challenge. For the moment when he stood face to face with something that could kill him in an instant, and he outsmarted it anyway. The communication panel beeped. Incoming transmission, the computer announced. Accept, Taeho said, putting down his tablet. The screen flickered, but instead of showing the usual face of his handler, it remained dark. A voice came through, soft, melodic, and definitely not human. Hunter Taeho, the voice said. I am Sunma. I wish to modify our arrangement. Taeho frowned. I don't know you. My contract is with the Galactic Specimen Authority. A light chuckle came through the speakers. The GSA is merely my agent in this matter. I am the true client. Taeho's hand moved to his sidearm, a reflex born from years of dealing with double crosses. Show yourself. The screen remained dark. I cannot. My species perceives light differently than yours. A visual would be uncomfortable for you. What species? I am Nexian. Taeho's eyes widened. Nexians were rare, secretive, and incredibly wealthy. An aquatic race known for their advanced technology and their strange hobby, collecting dangerous predators from across the galaxy. What's the modification? Taeho asked, his curiosity now fully engaged. I want the Kraken alive and unharmed, Sunma said. And I want you to deliver it personally to my home on Nexus Prime. I have transmitted the coordinates to your ship. The computer beeped, confirming the received data. That's a significant change. My equipment has been supplemented, Sunma interrupted. Check Cargo Bay 3. You'll find what you need. Taeho stood up. I work alone. I don't like surprises. The payment has been tripled, Sunma said simply. After a long pause, Taeho replied, I'll check the cargo bay. The transmission ended without another word. Taeho walked quickly to Cargo Bay 3, a space he kept empty for captured specimens. The door slid open to reveal a large container that hadn't been there when he left port. Inside was the most advanced capture system he had ever seen. A neural disruptor that could knock out a creature without harming it. A containment field generator that could adapt to any biology. And a stasis chamber that could keep the Kraken alive during transport. Taeho ran his hand over the equipment. This technology was beyond anything available on the open market. Even military-grade gear couldn't compare. Who are you really, Sunma? He whispered to himself. The ship's computer interrupted his thoughts. Course correction required to match new destination parameters. Taeho thought for a moment. The hunt just got more complicated, but also more interesting. A live capture of a void kraken had never been attempted before. If anyone could do it, he could. Accept new coordinates, he told the computer. Set course for the Hera Nebula. Then to Nexus Prime after. The hunt was on. Sun Mei floated in her viewing chamber, her translucent skin catching the blue light from below. All around her, giant tanks filled the circular room. Each tank held a different creature from across the galaxy, deadly beasts that would kill without thought. But here, they were safe, contained, studied. She moved to the center tank, currently empty. It was the largest one, built specially for her newest desire, a void kraken. The thought made her inner lights pulse with excitement. Mistress, the human hunter has accepted the new terms, her assistant Hack said, swinging into the room. Sun Mei turned, her gill flaps opening slightly. Good. Is he as skilled as they say? His record speaks for itself. 26 captures of Class 5 predators. No failures. Sun Mei circled the empty tank, trailing her long fingers across the glass. Humans are fascinating, aren't they? Such fragile bodies, yet they hunt creatures 10 times their size. They are reckless, Hack said, his tone disapproving. No, Sun Mei corrected. They are brave. There is a difference. She swam to a smaller tank where a razor eel from Earth's oceans slithered among artificial rocks. It was one of her first specimens, less impressive than her later acquisitions, but she kept it to remind herself where her collection began. Prepare my communication chamber, Sun Mei said. I want to see this human in action. Taiho's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Hera Nebula. Clouds of purple and green gas swirled outside his view screen. Somewhere in this beautiful but deadly region of space, a void kraken waited. He activated the biosignature scanner. The new equipment from Sun Mei worked better than anything he had used before. It could detect life forms through the thick nebula gases that would normally block sensors. Computer, begin sweep pattern alpha, Taiho ordered. The ship moved slowly through the nebula, its sensors reaching out into the colorful mist. 3 hours passed with no results. Then 4. Taiho was about to change search patterns when the alarm sounded. Biosignature detected, the computer announced. Distance, 2,000 kilometers. Size, approximately 22 meters from center mass to tentacle tip. Taiho's heart beat faster. Match with known species. Negative. No match in database. However, pattern matches partial scan from mining vessel incident. This was it. The void kraken. Set intercept course. Stealth mode. The Stalker's Pride turned off its external lights and moved silently through the nebula. As Taiho approached the coordinates, he saw something dark moving against the colorful gases, something with long, flowing limbs. The communication system activated on its own, startling him. Impressive, Sun Mei's voice said. You found it faster than I expected. Taiho frowned. Are you hacking my ship? I merely connected through the equipment I provided. I want to observe. I work alone, Taiho said firmly. Then pretend I'm not here, Sun Mei replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. But tell me, what is your plan? Despite his annoyance, Taiho found himself explaining. Void krakens are attracted to energy signatures. I'm going to drop a probe that mimics a ship's engine. When it moves to investigate, I'll deploy the neural disruptor. Clean, simple, efficient, Sun Mei said. I see why your reputation is so strong. The dark shape in the nebula changed direction suddenly, moving away from them. It sensed us, Taiho said, his hands flying over the controls. I need to. Wait, Sun Mei interrupted. Look at its movement pattern. Taiho watched the creature. It wasn't fleeing. It was circling, staying just at the edge of sensor range. It's studying us, Sun Mei said, her voice filled with wonder. It's intelligent. Taiho felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. This was a battle of wits. I need to adjust my approach, he said. Yes, Sunmei agreed. This will be more challenging than either of us expected. As the Void Kraken continued its careful circling, Taiho realized something else. He was being hunted too. Time for Plan B, he muttered, reaching for his tactical display. The real game had just begun. Taiho watched the sensor display as the Void Kraken moved through the nebula. For 3 days, he had tried different traps. None had worked. The creature was too smart. It learns from each attempt, Taiho said, rubbing his tired eyes. Fascinating. Sunmi's voice came through the speakers. She had been watching the whole time. No one has ever observed a Void Kraken this long. You are making scientific history, Hunter Taiho. Taiho wasn't interested in making history. He needed to complete the job. But he had to admit, his respect for the creature grew with each failed trap. I need to try something completely different, he said. He turned off the ship's main power, leaving only life support running. The asterisk Stalker's Pride asterisk became dark and quiet, drifting silently through the purple clouds of the nebula. What are you doing? Sunmei asked. Becoming the bait, Taiho replied. He put on his spacesuit and checked the neural disruptor. The small device could knock out a creature 10 times his size, but only at close range. Taiho attached it to his arm and headed for the airlock. This is extremely dangerous, Sunmei said, her voice showing concern for the first time. Taiho smiled. That's what makes it fun. He stepped into the airlock, and then out into the nebula. The gases swirled around him as he floated, tethered to his ship by a thin cable. His suit's jets allowed him to move slowly in the colorful mist. Minutes passed, then an hour. Taiho waited patiently. Hunting was often about waiting for the perfect moment. His suit's sensors beeped softly. Something was approaching from below. It's coming, he whispered. I see it, Sunmei replied through his helmet. Be careful. The nebula gases parted as a massive shape rose beneath him. Taiho got his first clear look at the Void Kraken. Its body was like black glass, reflecting the colors of the nebula. 10 long tentacles moved gracefully around a central mass, and its eyes, 7 of them, arranged in a circle, glowed with an inner blue light. It was beautiful. The Kraken stopped a short distance away, its tentacles gently waving in the weightlessness of space. It seemed to be studying Taiho as much as he was studying it. It's curious, Sunmei said. Not aggressive. Not yet, Taiho replied. Slowly, he raised his hand, the one with the neural disruptor. The Kraken watched, not moving closer or further away. Taiho had one chance. The disruptor needed to hit near the creature's central mass to work properly. If he missed, the Kraken might attack or flee, and he would lose his opportunity. He took aim and fired. The disruptor shot forward, trailing a thin wire. But at the last second, the Kraken moved with surprising speed. The device missed its center, hitting one of the tentacles instead. The creature let out a silent pulse that Taiho felt rather than heard. The Kraken's tentacles suddenly extended toward him. Return to the ship, Sunmei shouted in his ear. But Taiho didn't move. This was the moment all hunters face, when the prey becomes the predator. As the tentacles reached for him, Taiho hit the release on his tether. He pushed away from his safe connection to the ship and propelled himself directly toward the Kraken. What are you doing? Sunmi's voice was panicked. Finishing the job, Taiho said. He flew between 2 tentacles and landed on the Kraken's main body. The creature's skin felt smooth and cold beneath his gloved hands. Taiho pulled out his backup disruptor and pressed it directly against the Kraken's center. Sleep well, he whispered, and activated the device. A pulse of energy flowed from the disruptor. The Kraken's movements slowed. Its glowing eyes dimmed one by one. The massive tentacles drifted limply in the nebula gases. Taiho used his suit jets to push the now unconscious creature toward his ship. Prepare the containment chamber, he said. The package is secured. There was a long pause before Sunmei replied. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever witnessed. Taiho smiled inside his helmet. Sometimes they're the same thing. Taiho's ship entered orbit around Nexus Prime. The planet below was mostly ocean, with small islands scattered across its surface. The Kraken remained in stasis during the 5-day journey. Sometimes Taiho went to check on it, watching as it floated peacefully in the containment chamber. Nexian control to human vessel. A voice said over the communication system, "Follow the landing beam to coordinates." A blue light appeared in front of Taiho's ship. He followed it down through the planet's atmosphere to a large structure floating on the ocean surface. It looked like a giant lotus flower made of white metal. "Landing complete," Taiho said as his ship touched down on one of the petals of the structure. He put on his environment suit. Nexians breathe water as well as air, so their buildings were often partially flooded. The suit would keep him dry and help him breathe if necessary. Taiho went to the containment chamber and checked the Kraken one last time. Its vital signs were stable. He activated the hovering platform beneath the chamber, and it floated up, ready to follow him. As Taiho stepped out of his ship, warm, humid air hit his face. 3 Nexians waited for him. They stood upright on 2 legs, but their skin was blue and slightly transparent. He could see the faint outlines of organs inside their bodies. They had no hair, but long fins extended from their heads and arms. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," the middle one said. "I am Hack, personal assistant to Mistress Sunmei. She awaits you below." Taiho nodded. "The specimen is ready for transfer." Hack looked at the floating containment chamber. His large eyes blinked slowly. "This way," he said, turning toward a circular door in the floor. The door opened to reveal a tube filled with clear water. Hack and the other Nexians dove in gracefully. Taiho hesitated, then pushed the containment chamber into the tube. It was designed to work underwater. He followed, activating his suit's underwater mode. They descended through the tube into a massive underwater complex. Taiho's eyes widened as he saw huge tanks filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Some he recognized from past hunts. Others were completely new to him. The tube ended in a large circular room. The water drained quickly, leaving only a shallow pool in the center. Around the edges of the room, the floor was dry. Standing by the pool was a Nexian unlike the others. Her skin had a faint purple tint, and the fins along her arms were longer and more elegant. She wore a simple white garment that seemed to float around her body. "Hunter Taiho," she said, her voice the same one he had heard over his ship's communication system. "I am Sunmei. Welcome to my home." Taiho removed his helmet. "The Void Kraken is secure and healthy." Sunmei moved closer to the containment chamber. Her movements were graceful, almost like she was still underwater. "Beautiful," she whispered, placing a webbed hand on the clear wall of the chamber. "Even more impressive than I imagined." "It's intelligent," Taiho said. "More than any creature I've hunted before." Sunmei looked at him, her large eyes studying his face. "You respect it?" "Yes." She smiled, showing slightly pointed teeth. "Good. That is why I chose you for this task." Suddenly, the containment chamber's lights flashed red. The Kraken inside moved slightly. "It's waking up early," Taiho said, reaching for the controls. "The stasis field is failing." "Release it into the pool," Sunmei said calmly. Taiho stared at her. "It's dangerous. The neural disruption hasn't fully worn off. It might be confused, angry." "Trust me," Sunmei said. Her eyes seemed to glow slightly. Taiho hesitated, then pressed the release button. The chamber opened, and the Kraken slid out into the pool. Its tentacles began to move slowly as it regained consciousness. One tentacle rose from the water, reaching toward Sunmei. Taiho moved quickly, putting himself between Sunmei and the Kraken. But Sunmei gently moved him aside. "Watch," she said. She reached out her own hand. The tentacle touched her fingers gently. A soft blue glow passed between them. "She's curious," Sunmei said. "Not angry." She, Tahoe asked. Sun Mi nodded. Yes, a female, young, but already so wise. The Kraken's eyes opened one by one, glowing blue in the dim room. And somehow, Tahoe knew this was just the beginning. You should stay a few days, Sun Mi said as they watched the Kraken explore its new home, to make sure she adjusts well. 3 days had passed since Tahoe arrived on Nexus Prime. The payment for the job had already been transferred to his account. He could leave any time, but something made him want to stay. I suppose a few more days wouldn't hurt, he said. Sun Mi's fins rippled in what he now recognized as a sign of happiness. Excellent. I will show you my world. The next morning, Sun Mi took Tahoe to an underwater garden. He wore a special suit that let him breathe underwater without a bulky helmet. The suit was thin and comfortable, almost like a second skin. They swam among plants that glowed in different colors. Fish with strange shapes moved around them. Tahoe had never seen anything so beautiful. My people have lived in harmony with the ocean for 10,000 years, Sun Mi explained as they floated among the colorful plants. We believe that all dangerous creatures deserve respect, not fear. Is that why you collect them? Tahoe asked. Sun Mi nodded. We study them, learn from them, and protect them from those who would destroy them out of fear. Later, they visited the tank where the Kraken now lived. It was huge, with plenty of space for her to move. The Kraken swam to the glass when she saw them approaching. She recognizes you, Sun Mi said. Tahoe placed his hand on the glass. One of the Kraken's tentacles touched the same spot from inside the tank. How do your people view creatures like this? Sun Mi asked. Tahoe thought for a moment. Differently. Earth has many dangerous animals. For most of our history, humans had to fight to survive. We were not the strongest or fastest, but we were smart, and we worked together. You became hunters, Sun Mi said. Yes, but the best hunters respect their prey. They understand that every creature has its place in the world. Sun Mi moved closer to him. Your people are fascinating. So fragile compared to many species, yet you have spread across the stars faster than anyone expected. That evening, they ate dinner in a room overlooking the ocean. The sun set, turning the water gold and red. Tahoe tried Nexian food, which tasted like a mix of fish and fruit. It was strange but good. Tell me about your hunts, Sun Mi said. Tahoe told her stories of tracking dangerous creatures across different planets. He spoke of close calls and successful captures. Sun Mi listened with great interest, asking questions about his techniques and tools. Your approach is so different from ours, she said. We Nexians use our telepathic abilities to calm creatures. You use your wits and technology. Different methods, same goal, Tahoe replied. Understanding. Sun Mi's eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. Exactly. As days passed, Tahoe found himself thinking less about leaving. Each morning, he and Sun Mi checked on the Kraken. They named her Mujige, which meant rainbow in Tahoe's native language, because her skin reflected light in beautiful patterns. Mujige grew more comfortable each day. She learned to take food from Sun Mi's hand. She even allowed Tahoe to enter her tank and swim with her. She trusts you, Sun Mi said one day as they watched Mujige play with a large ball Sun Mi had given her. That is rare for her kind. How do you know? Tahoe asked. I thought void krakens were mostly unknown. Sun Mi was quiet for a moment. My people have legends about creatures like her. Ancient stories tell of a time when Nexians and krakens communicated. Do you think that's possible? Tahoe asked. Before Sun Mi could answer, an alarm blared throughout the complex. Red lights flashed. Security breach, a computerized voice announced. Unknown vessels approaching. Hostile intent detected. Sun Mi's face showed fear for the first time since Tahoe had met her. What is it? He asked. Trouble, she replied. The kind that always follows rare and valuable creatures. Tahoe's hand moved to his weapon. The hunter was about to become a protector. Get to the safety room, Hack said, rushing into the viewing area. 3 ships have entered our atmosphere without permission. Sunmei shook her head. No, I must check on the specimens. I'll come with you, Taiho said, pulling out his blaster. Who are they? Likely Scorch Raiders, Sunmei replied as they hurried through the corridors. They steal rare creatures and sell them. The complex shook as something hit it from above. Alarms blared louder. Nexian staff ran in all directions, some carrying weapons, others moving toward the specimen tanks. They reached Mujiga's tank. The Kraken was moving frantically, her tentacles hitting the glass. She senses the danger, Sunmei said. She placed her hand on the tank. Calm, little one, calm. The Kraken didn't calm down. Instead, her movements became more urgent. She kept pointing one tentacle toward the ceiling, then back at Sunmei. What's she doing? Taiho asked. Sunmei's eyes widened. I think she's warning us. Another explosion rocked the complex. The lights flickered. We need to move, Taiho said, taking Sunmei's arm. But Sunmei stared at Mujiga. The Kraken's skin was changing colors rapidly, flashing patterns of blue and purple. She's communicating, Sunmei whispered. She closed her eyes, concentrating. Taiho looked nervously at the doorway, expecting raiders to burst in at any moment. Sunmei, we don't have time. Wait, she said. Her fins were vibrating. I can feel her thoughts. Not words, but impressions, feelings. The complex shook again. This time, part of the ceiling collapsed nearby. Sunmei. She opened her eyes. She wants to help us. She knows these raiders. They captured her once before. Taiho looked at the Kraken with new understanding. That's why she was in the nebula. She escaped from them. Mujiga pressed a tentacle against the glass, directly in front of Sunmei's face. The Kraken's eyes glowed brighter than Taiho had ever seen. I'm going to release her, Sunmei said suddenly. What? No. Taiho grabbed her hand. It's too dangerous. She won't hurt us, Sunmei insisted. I can feel her intentions. She wants to protect us. Before Taiho could argue further, the door to the room burst open. 3 humans in black armor ran in, carrying weapons. Don't move, one shouted. Step away from the tank. Taiho pushed Sunmei behind him and fired his blaster. The raiders ducked for cover. That's the hunter from the nebula, another raider said. The one who took our prize. Kill him, the leader ordered. Take the Nexian alive. She can help us control the specimens. More raiders appeared in the doorway. Taiho knew they couldn't win this fight. Do it, he said to Sunmei. Release her. Sunmei pressed her hand to the tank's control panel. The top of the tank slid open. The raiders realized what was happening. Stop her. But it was too late. Mujiga shot out of the tank like a rocket, water splashing everywhere. Her tentacles spread wide as she landed on the floor between Taiho and Sunmei and the raiders. The raiders stopped, staring in fear at the creature before them. Mujiga's body pulsed with blue light. Her tentacles moved in a threatening pattern. One raider fired his weapon, but the energy blast seemed to be absorbed by the Kraken's skin. Impossible, the raider whispered. Mujiga struck. Her tentacles moved faster than Taiho's eyes could follow. 3 raiders were thrown against the wall. 2 more were wrapped in tentacles and squeezed until they dropped their weapons. The leader tried to run, but another tentacle caught his leg and dragged him back. In seconds, all 6 raiders were unconscious on the floor. Mujiga turned to face Taiho and Sunmei. Her skin had changed from threatening dark blue to a gentle purple. One tentacle reached out tentatively toward Sunmei. Sunmei stepped forward and touched the tentacle. Thank you, brave one. The Kraken's skin pulsed with light. Then, to Taiho's amazement, a tentacle reached out to him as well. He hesitated, then took it gently. The tentacle curled around his hand, not to hurt but to hold. I think she's chosen us, Sun Mai said softly. Chosen us for what? Taiho asked. Sun's eyes were filled with wonder. To be her family. More ships incoming, Hack reported, rushing into the room. He stopped when he saw Mujiga freed from her tank and the raiders unconscious on the floor. What happened here? Our new friend protected us, Sun Mai said, her hand still touching one of Mujiga's tentacles. Taiho checked the fallen raiders' weapons. These aren't normal raiders. Their gear is military grade. An explosion rocked the complex again. The lights went out, then emergency lights came on, bathing everything in red. The main power system is damaged, Hack said. Safety protocols are failing. Sun's face showed horror. The containment fields for the other specimens. As if on cue, alarms sounded from other parts of the complex. Roars and screeches echoed through the corridors. All specimens are breaking free, the computer voice announced. We need to get out of here, Taiho said. Sun Mei shook her head. I can't leave them. Some are too dangerous to be set free. Others will die outside their controlled environments. Taiho knew she was right. If all the creatures escaped, it would be a disaster for Nexus Prime. Can we restore power? He asked Hack. The backup generator is in the lower level, Hack replied. But the path there will be dangerous, Taiho finished for him. He turned to Sun Mei. Stay here with Mujiga. Keep the raiders contained. I'll get to the generator. No, Sun Mai said firmly. We go together. She looked at Mujiga. All of us. The Kraken's skin pulsed with light, as if in agreement. She can move on land, Taiho asked. For a short time, Sun Mai explained. Her kind evolved to survive both in space and water. Hack handed each of them a communication device. I will coordinate from the control room. Be careful. They left the room, Mujiga following behind them. Her movements on land were slower than in water, but still graceful. She used her tentacles to pull herself forward. The corridors were chaos. Some smaller specimens had escaped their tanks and were running in all directions. Staff members were trying to catch them. This way, Sun Mai said, leading them down a side passage. They passed a broken tank. Inside, a creature that looked like a giant scorpion was still sleeping. The stasis field is holding, but not for long, Sun Mai said. As they turned a corner, they met 3 more raiders. Mujiga moved faster than either Taiho or Sun Mai could react. Her tentacles knocked the raiders down before they could fire their weapons. She's amazing, Taiho said. They reached a large door marked with warning signs. Sun Mai placed her hand on the scanner. Generator room, she explained as the door opened. Inside was a massive machine. Half of it was dark, but parts still glowed with energy. It's damaged but not destroyed, Sun Mai said, examining the controls. I can reroute the power. She began working quickly, her webbed fingers moving over the control panel. Taiho kept watch at the door, his weapon ready. Mujiga suddenly became agitated. Her skin turned dark, and she pointed several tentacles toward the ceiling. What's wrong? Taiho asked. Before Sun Mai could answer, the ceiling exploded. Pieces of metal fell around them. Through the hole, Taiho could see a ship hovering above the complex. A figure dropped down through the hole. It was a human woman in advanced armor. Her face was partly covered by a metal mask. Step away from the controls, she said, pointing a large weapon at Sun Mai. Who are you? Taiho demanded, aiming his own weapon at her. Captain Sarah of the Scorch Raiders, she replied. Her eyes moved to Mujiga. And I see you've been taking care of my property. Mujiga's skin turned deep red. She moved forward, but Sarah aimed her weapon at the Kraken. I wouldn't, Sarah warned. This can kill even a void Kraken. Sun Mai stepped in front of Mujiga. She is not your property. She is a living being with rights. Sarah laughed. Rights? She's a weapon. The most dangerous creature in 3 systems, and I spent too much finding her to leave without her. Then you'll leave disappointed, Taiho said. Sarah smiled coldly. I don't think so. You have 1 hour to hand over the Kraken, or my ships will destroy this entire complex, and everyone in it. She threw something on the floor. Smoke filled the room. When it cleared, Sarah was gone. Sun Ma finished the repairs. The lights came back on throughout the complex. But they had a bigger problem now. What do we do? Sun Ma asked, looking at Mujige. The Kraken's tentacles were curled protectively around both her and Taiho. Taiho's face hardened. We fight. We have 55 minutes, Taiho said, checking the time. We need a plan. They had gathered in the control room. Hack and other Nexian staff were there too. On the screens, they could see the 3 raider ships hovering above the complex. What about your ship? Sun Ma asked Taiho. Could we escape? Taiho shook his head. They would shoot us down before we reached orbit. Mujige moved around the room, her tentacles touching different screens. Her skin changed colors rapidly. She's trying to tell us something, Sun Ma said. She closed her eyes, concentrating on the Kraken's thoughts. What is she saying? Taiho asked. She wants to fight, Sun Ma replied, opening her eyes. She knows these raiders. They hurt her, experimented on her. Taiho looked at the Kraken with new respect. But even she can't fight 3 ships. Maybe she doesn't have to, Sun Ma said slowly. An idea was forming in her mind. Hack, what other specimens do we have that could help? Hack checked the computer. The razor serpents in Section 4, the gravity bears in Section 7, and the shadow hunters, Sun Ma finished. Are they still contained? Yes, Hack confirmed. Their tank was not damaged. Sun Ma turned to Taiho. I think I know how to beat the raiders. She explained her plan quickly. It was dangerous but might work. Taiho would need to get to his ship and be ready to use it. Sun Ma would work with Mujige and the other specimens. I'll need to form a deeper connection with Mujige, Sun Ma said. A true bond. What does that mean? Taiho asked. Nexians can form mental links with creatures, Sun Ma explained. But it's usually a one-way connection. I want to try something more. Is it dangerous? Sun Ma nodded. If Mujige rejects the connection, it could harm my mind. Taiho took her hand. There must be another way. There isn't, Sun Ma said firmly. And we're running out of time. They prepared quickly. Taiho gathered weapons and tools from the captured raiders. Sun Ma prepared a special chamber filled with water. I need to be in my natural environment for this, she explained as she entered the water. Mujige followed, sliding into the water with Sun Ma. The Kraken's tentacles gently wrapped around Sun Ma's body. When the connection forms, guide her to the others, Sun Ma told Taiho. I will. We will know what to do. Sun Ma closed her eyes. Her body began to glow with a soft blue light. Mujige's skin responded, matching the glow. The water around them seemed to vibrate with energy. Taiho watched nervously. Minutes passed. The glow grew stronger. Suddenly, Sun Ma's eyes opened, but they were different now. The pupils had changed shape, looking more like the Kraken's eyes. We are connected, Sun Ma said. Her voice sounded strange, as if 2 beings were speaking at once. Taiho helped them out of the water. Sun Ma moved differently now, more fluid, almost like she had extra limbs even though she didn't. They went to the different sections of the complex. At each one, Sun Ma and Mujige approached the tanks containing dangerous creatures. Instead of fearing the Kraken, the creatures responded to her presence. They recognize her power, Sun Ma explained, and now they will help us. One by one, Sun Ma released the creatures, 6 razor serpents, slim and fast with scales that could cut through metal, 3 gravity bears, massive creatures that could control their personal gravity, and finally, 2 shadow hunters, predators that could become nearly invisible. Instead of running wild, the creatures followed Sun Ma and Mujige. The Kraken's skin pulsed with different patterns, somehow communicating with each species. 30 minutes left, Hack reported through the communication device. Tell everyone to get to the safe rooms, Taiho ordered, and open the main dome. The large dome at the top of the complex began to open slowly. Taiho ran to his ship and started the engines. Sun Me, Nujige, and their unusual army gathered in the central chamber beneath the opening dome. Ready? Taiho asked through the communication device. Sun Me looked up at the raider ships visible through the open dome. Her eyes, still changed by the connection with Mujige, narrowed. They wanted a monster, she said, her voice still carrying that dual quality. Let's show them what a true monster can do when it fights for those it loves. Mujige's skin glowed bright blue, a signal to the other creatures. The hunt was about to begin. But this time, the hunters would become the hunted. Captain Sarah's voice boomed through speakers around the complex. Your time is up. Bring the Kraken to the main platform, or we attack. Taiho's ship rose slowly through the open dome. The 3 raider ships hovered above, weapons pointed down. From his cockpit, Taiho could see Sarah standing on her ship's open deck, watching. I have the Kraken, Taiho said through the communication system. Preparing to transfer. Sarah smiled. Smart choice, Hunter. Below, hidden from the raiders' view, Sunmai stood with Mujige and their army of creatures. Her eyes, now like the Kraken's, looked up at Taiho's ship. Now, she whispered. Taiho's ship suddenly shot upward at full speed, directly at Sarah's ship. The raiders fired, but Taiho was too fast. He flew past them, drawing their attention. At that moment, Sunme and the creatures burst upward through the dome. The gravity bears went first, manipulating their weight to leap impossibly high. They landed on 2 of the raider ships, their heavy bodies denting the metal. The raiders tried to shoot them, but the bears' thick fur absorbed the energy blasts. The shadow hunters followed, becoming nearly invisible as they jumped. They slipped aboard the ships and began attacking the crews from within. Screams echoed across the communication channels. Sarah's ship turned to face the new threat. That's when the razor serpents struck, their sharp scales cutting through the ship's outer defenses as they slithered inside through small openings. Through it all, Mujige and Sunmai rose together. The Kraken's tentacles propelled them upward, straight toward Sarah's ship. They landed on the open deck where Sarah waited. Impossible, Sarah whispered, seeing Sun's changed eyes. You wanted Mujige as a weapon, Sunmai said, her voice still carrying that dual quality. But you never understood what she truly is. Mujige's skin glowed with blue light. The light spread to Sunmai, then outward in a wave. When it reached the other creatures, they stopped attacking. What are you doing? Sarah demanded, raising her weapon. Showing you what a true bond looks like, Sunmai replied. Taiho's ship returned, hovering nearby. From his viewpoint, he could see that all 3 raider ships were damaged but not destroyed. The creatures had been precise in their attacks. It's over, Sarah, Taiho said through the speaker. Your crews are contained. Your ships can't fly. Surrender. Sarah looked around wildly. Then she pointed her weapon at Sunmai. If I can't have the Kraken, no one will. Before she could fire, Mujige moved with lightning speed. A tentacle wrapped around Sarah's arm, not hurting her but holding her still. Another tentacle gently took the weapon. Sunme stepped forward. Void Krakens aren't weapons. They're communicators, bridge builders between species. That's why they were hunted to near extinction centuries ago by those who feared unity. That's impossible, Sarah said, struggling against Mujige's grip. See for yourself, Sunmai replied. Mujige extended another tentacle to touch Sarah's forehead. For a moment, Sarah's eyes widened in fear. Then they changed, becoming calm as she received a glimpse of Mujige's true nature. When the tentacle pulled away, Sarah slumped to her knees. I didn't know, she whispered. 6 months later, Taiho stood on the observation platform of the new facility. Below him stretched a massive complex, much larger than Sunmi's original home. Dozens of tanks housed creatures from across the galaxy. But these weren't specimens for collection. They were residents of the first interspecies communication center. Sunmi joined him, her eyes now back to normal. The deep bond with Mujige had faded after the battle, but a connection remained. The Galactic Council has approved funding for 3 more centers, she said happily. Taiho smiled. And Sarah, her knowledge of rare species has been valuable. She's working with the Artisan researchers now. They looked down at the largest tank, where Mujige swam with 3 other young void Krakens that Sarah had helped them locate. She's happy, Sunmi said, watching Mujige. They all are. Taiho took Sunmi's hand. And you? Are you happy with your dangerous pet and her human friend? Sunmi's fins rippled in that way that Taiho now knew meant she was laughing. I think, she said, leaning against him, that I'm not sure who the pet is anymore. Perhaps we all domesticated each other. Below them, Mujige looked up and flashed a pattern of colors across her skin. A greeting. A message of love. The hunter, the collector, and their Kraken. 3 different species united by something stronger than fear or power. Understanding. The end.